Alright, now that we have drilled and cut out our mortises and cut out the tenons, it's time to start fitting them together. Because these are only rough cuts, so you can see that we have our mortise here and our tenon, and if I try to fit the tenon there, it's too thick and it's a little bit too long because I've cut the mortise such that, let's see if I can get this on here, such that you can see I have wood on the waist side of my line, and there's a slight curve here as I was trying to be careful not to get too close to this line. The same thing up top. So we're going to need to shave these guys down, and we're going to use a combination of chisels and rasps and files to do that. And we're going to go back and forth between the mortise and the tenon in filing these down. The mortises need to be squared up because they're not exactly square, and then the tenons need to be thinned just a little bit. And we're going to clamp our sides down to the bench with some scrap under it so we don't destroy the bench itself, to chisel them out, and then hold down or possibly clamp, depending as we have need and things slide around, the shelves to rasp and chisel out the tenons, making sure always to keep both hands behind the blade of the chisel so the chisel only cuts wood and not fingers. Another thing we're going to have to do right off the bat is label our joints to make sure that they go together. I've got my pencil here. So we're going to take this guy and very lightly draw a letter. So B here, I have A's there, B here, C here, and D here. And what that's going to do is, as we test and fit the individual joints, we don't get them mixed up and have a tenon meant for a different mortise trying to fit in there, and then we end up with weird gaps and weird, tightnesses. So at the moment, everything's kind of general, but we're going to be specifying this tenon goes with this mortise because every single one is going to end up being just a little bit different. It also lets us, and I've done this ahead of time, make sure that this ugly knot is on the bottom of the bottom, and that tear out from when I wasn't being careful at the router table is at the bottom, and for how I would orient this in my living room, back corner, out of sight. So we're going to come in for a close-up of the setting up the chisel and a reminder of how to hold the chisel, especially when you're starting out, for being very precise in your cuts. Alright, I have my side clamped down with scrap underneath it to make sure that if my chisel accidentally goes all the way through, and I don't want it to because that will increase the likelihood of tear out, but if my chisel does slip all the way through, I don't ruin my tabletop. Close-up of the mortise. And we can see that there is my line here, and then on the wrong side of the line I still have some waste, and the same thing on that side, and for the ends I'm right up against the line for these guys, so I don't think I need to chisel the ends much, but for these guys I'm going to want a slightly wider chisel, and I'm going to want to hold it so that my fingers are on the back side and I can use them as a pivot. So I can put my fingers down first and then very precisely place the blade where I want it to be, and then go straight up and then give it a whack. And do the same thing on the other side and start working my way down that wall. And just shave off the tiniest amount. Going most of the way down, but not all the way down. You can see that I have curled up, some waste there. And I'm just taking off the tiniest amounts for these guys. You can also pare back, depending on how much waste you have to deal with. You can pare back instead of chopping. You need to remember to clamp down so that you're not holding it with one hand and stabbing it with the other. And the whole way through, you need to keep an eye on that line so that you don't chop through the line. Now that I've chopped down part way, I want to flip this over and chop from the other direction. And you can clear some of that waste out underneath there and take a look from the other direction and see what needs to be done from this direction. Because just because I'm flush on the one side doesn't mean that I'm flush from both sides. And take out from the other direction what I've already started to remove, and then I don't have to go all the way through and get tear out on the other side. This is especially important to pay attention to which side you want to be the outside of your table so that you especially don't get tear out on that side. Alright, let's see how this, and this is my, what did I call that? That's D. Here's my D tenon. Let's see how this fits. Alright, my tenon is still thicker than I want it and a smidge longer. So the tenon is going to need to be pared down just a little bit now. I'm going to use a rasp for that first, followed by some shaving with a chisel. Clamp that to the table as well. Now, with rasping this down, we need to be careful not to rock this back and forth, because as soon as we start rocking that, these corners are going to get rounded over, and then that's going to introduce gaps with the mortise. So we need to make sure to keep this level and straight, and also not twist it side to side. Now you notice that the teeth on this guy don't go all the way to the edge, so I'm introducing a lip here. I don't know if you can see it. There's just an ever so slight lip where this is being rasped, but that corner isn't, so I'm going to need to take my chisel and pare that back. Alright, got a layer rasped down there. Time for another test fit before doing the other side, because it would be most unfortunate to go too far unnecessarily. Alright, so I've got D here, and nope, it's still too thick, and a smidge too long, and yeah, this is mostly squared, so I'm going to do a little bit of rasping to smooth out the mortise. Mostly need to work on the tenon now. So flip this guy over, reclamp, because I don't want to deal with it sliding around on me. Making sure to keep the rasp flat and not rock it like I just did right there. All right. So clean that up. Now let's try another fit and see how this is going. Oh, wait a second, that's upside down. I can tell from my label of the D's. Ooh. All right, there we go. That's on, and I only had to use my hand, which is a good sign. Ooh, and I have pretty well flush front and back here. That's good because cut them from the same board, and I have proud on this side by 1/8 of an inch as expected, and then we can glue and sand that down. All right, and now we're going to do this with the other 3 mortise and tenons, get them paired up and shaved down. Well, the tenons shaved down and the mortises squared and expanded just a little bit so that they fit together. And we're going for the same tight line all the way across and a square fit.